Coming to you live, it's the AutoHub show with Ian and Jeff. Here we go.
Who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Hi, I'm Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of a company called Retail Resilient, social selling for the car industry. And we help auto dealers, auto agencies, and vendors in the auto industry sell more cars, service more cars, and make more money using our social selling strategy. That includes TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and anything else you can think of. So if you're looking to invest thousands and make millions, we're definitely the social selling company for you. Like I said, who said you can't teach an old dog new tricks?
I was at Larry Foman's seminar. So happy I came, having such a good time. Thank you so much, Larry.
One of the best trainers in this area for sure. I don't know about anywhere else, but as far as I know, he's the best. So,
told you twice.
Take advantage.
Thank you for having me here.
I'm at Larry Feldman's seminar, and what I found is that what he's really good at doing with his knowledge and with his training, he's not filling a bucket, he's lighting a fire.
Ways to improve. Every month we want to improve better on what we did the month before, maybe the year before. It's about how fast we can get the cars done with quality work to get it to the front line, because that's where we make our money. And the bottom line is the longer it takes, the more money you spend. We want to get it down as low as possible. Right now, like I said, we're in a great stage. We're at 4.5 days. In recon, we want to know how quickly we can get the cars out of the recon process and to the front line. The average days in recon and then the time to line are the most important things that we look for. I'm Mike Burrell. I'm Service Director at JM Lexus.
All right, so let me see if I can present this thing. I'm going to try and do that. This is it. All right, here we go. Let me just share it on this side. Sorry, I'm working from a hotel room today. This is it. All right, so there's a few.
Ian is officially homeless.
Exactly, moving to Alberta soon. So a couple books.
Isn't that like everyone else in Vancouver?
No, there's people here still paying all the money. There's a new condo going up, 1,200 square feet for only $3 million asking. Can't Hurt Me is David Goggins' first book. If you haven't read, really interesting story. Do the Work, Stephen Pressfield, 365 Days of Self-Discipline. Jeff, go ahead with our disclaimer.
Well, I do have to say something. You talked about real estate here. There was a thing going around Vancouver that showed a bunch of listings for Hollywood stars' homes, and with great big places, big driveways, etc. Then they showed Vancouver with an 1,100 square foot bungalow for the same price. So yes, we have a little bit of a
$1,100 a square foot. Give you a sense.
Yeah. So welcome everybody. Our disclaimer is the words and opinions shared today are those of our guests, not necessarily that of Ian and Jeff in the AutoHub show, but it's going to be fun. And by the way, if you saw our video, we do totally disavow any knowledge of swearing over the airwaves.
And there's a couple more books. Jordan B. Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. Great book. His new book, Beyond Order, which is an extension. And I'm actually listening to his first book, which is quite interesting. He's a Canadian, has gotten global fame and also disdain, but he's a psychologist, not a politician. Quite interesting stuff. So today we're talking about training and managing staff at dealerships. So go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I'm looking forward to a really good show. It's a very interesting topic right now. And the reason that we came up with this is we've talked about this so much, and I'm going to see some eyebrows raised at the moment and some fists raised, but it seems that to be successful in the automotive industry at the moment, training and managing is not exactly, how would I put it? The good ones aren't getting paid as much for their training and expertise as just the ones that are unlocking their doors and opening them. So if I have done a little controversy there, great. Our guests today, we have some great guests on today, and also we had a lot of great people that are capital T training people. And our official guest today are Brian Motes, and today should be called The Brian Show, and Brian Maxwell, both joining us from somewhere in the southeastern corner of the United States. And then we have some other smiling people there who are all looking at me. John Latka's smiling and Doug's thinking. He's going, And I'm going to get Brian to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about us, himself, not us. We know all about us. And I would like you to answer this first question, please. Brian, things are so good, so good. So when business flows like water over a waterfall, can you really train staff? And does it really matter today? Right.
It absolutely matters, and it matters more than it's ever mattered, especially with the transition to be more consumer experience focused than we've ever been as an industry. But so my background is I've spent kind of at a winding road, started in recruiting and training, or recruiting specifically about 15 years ago after I shut down my restaurant. I've always been involved in the retail experience, primarily in automotive, had a little bit of what I said, a lack of judgment to get into the restaurant business and open a restaurant. And we got destroyed in 2008 when the economy collapsed. Restaurants were going out of business to the tune of about five and seven restaurants were going out of business, and we were one of them. After that, went into the recruiting space, went from recruiting to training, e-learning, talent development, curriculum development, and then went to Ford and Lincoln in consumer experience, bringing all that kind of together with recruiting, onboarding, training, IO psychology, org development, curriculum development, all of that entire employee experience, A to Z, has been my experience. And now I'm with RepairPal, which is just basically one point solution tool in the employee experience to be able to give, frontline associates the ability to better engage with consumers. So that's kind of my story. But yeah, to answer your question, training now more than ever is a critical business component to achieving the success that we want to achieve as an industry.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time. For all of you there, he's at what I think North Carolina State University or something on how to learn how to not to be a helicopter parent when your child starts university.
Yeah, 100%.
Our next guest, the smiling face of Brian Maxwell, joining us from Jacksonville, Florida, I think. Or he's got the green screen there behind him just to show he's green with envy. Anyways, Brian, please introduce yourself. And by the way, I do have to mention Brian and Larry Feldman have this fantastic podcast on Wednesdays. You should watch it, and basically deals with generally this topic. So again, tell us, when things are so good like this, and I know obviously for your livelihood, they have to rely on it. Does it really matter? We keep hearing people about walking into stores, and I have an interesting story to share later, but there's just customers lined up looking for a salesman. So does it really matter?
I believe it matters, but it's like you said, in the automotive industry, one of the things that I always tout is that we are the slowest transitioning industry that I can think of, right? So, customers overflowing, and just like always, you have what I found is that, especially with all this AI explosion stuff, and I understand it, you got a lot of companies now that hear the AI thing and they got a manager going in to print off a script. They're giving it to their salespeople and they're having them try it out. And what they're finding is that AI is still a computer, and it lacks emotion and it lacks that human interaction. But how do we convince the general manager to come out of pocket, prior to them spending XYZ amount of days, weeks, or months kind of trying this new thing out? So I know, at least for me, I heard you say at the front that trainers aren't earning as much. I've actually increased my pricing. And what I found is that it's helped me tremendously, because everybody is just trying to get that one. And you got some people charging, and I don't know what anybody charges, so I'm not trying to disrespect, but you got people going out there throwing out, they'll come out and spend a week with somebody for $5,000. Well, depending on what you're doing or what your value is, that may work for you. But if they go in and they bomb and there's no real results from it, there's no way that they can quantify it. The next time somebody comes in, and let's just say they're asking for double that, or they demand double that, that's where the resistance may come in. And so one thing I realize about training in these stores, I have to stay in front of these people. And I realize content is king. And the reason why I believe I get called like I do is because I'm easiest to find. But you said, when you got people lined up out there, how do you convince somebody that they need training? You really can't. I found that communicating with owners and managing partners or dealer principals is the way to go, because you still have a general manager whose commission is tied into right now. So if you have a ton of sales coming in, they're making their money, their commission checks are fine. To entice that person to come out of 10 or 15 grand to pay somebody to come out, that's where the challenge is. I think they all know that training is necessary, but most GMs are what I call IRG, instant return gratification. And so the community, the owners and dealer principals are in it for the long haul. They can go 3 months because they know they'll rock with you for 3 months because the return that they're going to generate, where a general manager says, I got these bills now. I'm used to making 200-300 grand. I got these bills. I can't afford to take a risk of dropping 10 or 15 grand with somebody, hurting my pocket, hurting my family. They see the small picture, the micro rather than the macro. So I would say it is necessary, but we have to be louder and we have to stop parroting the same crap. Everybody walks around talking about what they need to do. How about showing it? And I think that that's been the difference maker as a trainer. Any videos I put out, I'm not saying what you should do. I'm giving you the word tracks too. And it's up to them to make their mind up of if that works. And they say, damn it, I like that. Let's roll with it. So training is necessary. How we go about it is different. And us think content is king and just stand in front of people. And I hope that answered your question in that long drawn out response.
No, that definitely does. And it's very interesting. You reminded me of something. One of the busiest businesses that I can think of at the moment in general is Starbucks. You go into a Starbucks, you can go in there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and this really cheerful person's there is going, if you go through the drive-thru, you walk up, they go, hi, Brian, or down where you are, hey, Brian, and how are you today? What can I get you? They're not making a lot of money, but they know their stuff. You ask them what's in a caramel macchiato, low foam, high fuzz, whatever, they can tell you. And they're very, very well trained, and they're really busy. Like, in the morning, there's 25 cars in the lineup, there's 40 cars inside, there's 6 people in the store, and they're taking care of them. Yet we in the car industry, like you say, you go in there and there's a manager go, well, I don't need to pay that kind of money. So anybody else on the call, please feel free to pipe up at any time. And the Bryans, I'm sure, will not be offended by it.
I think Gail has a thought.
I like what Brian said. It's necessary, but how we train is different, right? How Brian trains versus how I train versus how Larry trains.
Well, Larry doesn't really train. Larry just stands on chairs and makes them
No, but it's true too. Like, I like what Brian said. So I like the longevity of it, right? I go to the owner, I go to the dealer principal, and I have a conversation why their marketing director needs to sit in a social selling class for 12 months, and how even if I provide them 12 months of training, they still won't know everything about social media. So, and I do find
they're going to quit, right, Gal? They want to walk out the door and quit when they find out that you're coming, because they think they're threatened by you. They don't really.
How we accommodate them. So they're the dealers that are like, hey, I'm willing to invest in one of my employees or 10 of my employees. Okay, they'll be in your social media class for a year. If they want results fast, they also pay us to outsource work to us. So to give them the fast lead generation results and the fast whatever, they, pay their additional fee, and we bring leads in while their team is learning how to do it. So we kind of created like a meshed social media strategy for these dealers to give them exactly what they need in both manners, right? The education piece, but also I want results right now.
And I'm gonna chime in on that real fast, if you don't mind, because Gail's is unique with the social selling. She got them for 12 months. It's social media based, and it just rolls like that. On the recruiting side, the reason why I've shifted so much towards strictly training, and I still do staffing. Matter of fact, I'm doing one in Illinois next week. Week after next. But because one, when you go there, you can have the greatest people you bring in. You train them up for those couple days or whatever, and when you leave, they're left with the same exact management staff that was there that needed you to come in the first place. And you know who they blame? It's easier to say, Brian or Larry or whoever didn't bring us good people, even though they were there working with them for 6 months and I only had them for 2 or 3 days. But when they blew out of there, it's easier to say it's our fault than to reflect and say it's theirs. So I found that when you can get in as far as in training and set that up, not just a one-shot deal, because again, how can we quantify what my training did, going into next month without us at least setting it up initially like that? It's like I heard somebody say earlier, I thought he said they want it quick, or I don't know if he said they want to quit, but they want it. You come out of training and everybody's going to be selling 20 units. If it was that easy, y'all would have already been doing that. So it requires time, but setting the right expectations. And I found that really positioning yourself in the industry as not necessarily a guru or an expert, but as a trusted, reliable resource that commands, or should I say demands, a certain level of respect and compensation to bring in a certain level of quality. That's what has to happen. I think we got too many people all over the spectrum charging all types of crazy prices out of fear, out of how am I going to pay my bills? And that's true, and I get that, but going low, having bare minimum that you need to be able to actually produce for these people is hurting what we do more than helping. Everybody shouldn't be in training. Everybody shouldn't be in business. They just shouldn't. So again, how do we translate that to them to get them to say, let me sign this check, let me cut the check? And I think it's going over, I don't want to say go over, but touching more than just the general manager. We got to touch those owners and dealer principals. But I like her 12-month program because it does require that to learn. And you still won't know everything. I've been at this for years. I still learn something new every day on social selling. So I thought that was a good
very
point.
interesting, Gail. How many GMs do you get that sit in your social selling class?
I would say
Not how many numbers?
30% dealer principals or GMs, and the other 70 is their internet manager or the marketing director.
Yeah, but it's very interesting how Brian hit the nail on the head, because you go in there and train. You goes in, he goes in, Brian goes in, Larry goes in, et cetera, and then they leave, and then the person making the decisions goes, why are you saying that? No, here's the right way to do it.
Right.
And you get an old fart dealer principal who's going to somebody saying, why are you wasting your time doing those stupid videos, and go get some ups?
Right.
Would everyone agree?
Go ahead. I'm going to build on that. I mean, from my background, Jeff, or you were hitting on it a little bit, Jeff, we're talking about, Starbucks. If we look at the Chick-fil-A, we look at Starbucks, we look at, Ritz-Carlton, we look at these big organizations. Our issue is that we're too disparate, too fractured, and too many point solutions that are out there without a holistic understanding that we have to have org development processes. There's an entire industry out there of IO psychology, org development, learning and development that's out there. And we have not adopted as an industry because we're too fractured. It's been too expensive and out of reach. And we don't have leadership that understands you have to build organizations. You have to have curriculum. You have to have, it's not about all these, look, we got training from the OEM. We got process training from the OEM. We've got process training from our point solutions, from our video MPI tool and our DMS. And we've got training on this little, the new shiny object, social, whatever it might be, social media. All these new shiny objects are thrown at us. And without any comprehensive curriculum development of role-based training, role-based learning of how you build a curriculum for a role, and then also having cross-training. But that starts at the top of understanding from an adult learning theory what you have to do to build a learning and development platform and program inside of a dealership. It's not point here, point there, point solution. I sold the GM, so now we're going to do this way. Well, now the GM they got a new GM, and we came in and we like this guy's approach, and so now we're going to change up and do it this way. We have to have a commitment, and I think you're going to start to see that a little bit more as dealer groups start to expand. Instead of having 1 and 2 rooftop organizations, we're going to have 10, 12, 15, 20, 25, 30 rooftops. We got corporate structures now and corporate support staff and centers of excellence inside these corporations that are going to put learning and development programs in place and start to build these programs. And it's going to make it harder for some of the practitioners in the industry because it's going to be harder to get in and be a part of that curriculum. And why should I use your content, or but it's what has to happen in order for us to be able to build a correct learning and development and curriculum-based, learning organization within the dealerships.
Now that's a very good point.
And that may be controversial. Some people might not like it, but That's just a reality.
Okay.
And I worked in those. I built curriculum for Meineke. I built curriculum for Mako, for International Speedway Corporation, for Dairy Queen, for Denny's. I mean, I worked for a company for 5 years where I was a role-based curriculum developer. And we understood that to build the brand forward, we had to build curriculum for each role. And it had to be linked to business results. What do you want it to come? And there's an entire industry out there. You get into Kirkpatrick's model of assessment, Bloom's taxonomy, smart learning objectives. I mean, there's an entire industry out there that we're not tapped into as an automotive industry, and we need to start, because there's industries out there that have gotten really good at building good training and good talent and organizational development platforms and programs, and we're not doing it as an industry, not yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's some great comments. I mean, like a curriculum, basic onboarding, basic understanding of tools. And of course, we have Doug on the call from Y to Z. And of course, we have Larry and John, who I'm sure have helped in those areas, as well as Gail. I mean, I've got a salesman who maybe doesn't understand the phone very well, and I'm teaching him how to use social media, but it's got to be part of a larger process, which is, what do I say to that customer? Jeff and I had lunch yesterday, and he was talking about a friend of his who bought a car from a Toyota dealer. And a Toyota dealer, he put a factory order, and the Toyota dealer called him and said, well, yeah, we'd love you to have this car that came in, but by the way, you have to buy all these products that are on it. Otherwise, you can continue to wait. Like, that was the best process they had to tell a customer, congratulations, your price just went up because we got a car for you, but it's got all this crap on it. And are you going to buy that?
Didn't
or
even have it on it. They said to him, if you want an opportunity, you're going to have to trade your car in. You're going to have to buy this. You're going to have to buy that. You're going to have to buy that. They didn't even have the training to think about this and say, Mr. Jones, the car's coming in. Unfortunately, it's a canceled order. Unfortunately, this person has done da-da-da-da-da. He's got a jet engine on it. He's got a helicopter on the top, etc. If you want that car, you're going to have to buy it. If not a problem. We've got your name in there. And I do want to go to Peter because he's had his hand raised for quite a while.
Well, thank you. I'm sure everyone on this call can agree that when we talk about Starbucks, you have a company that's selling, depending on what you're buying, anywhere from $2 to $10 coffees, but they're putting in $40,000, $50,000 worth of training to each individual. They're not concerned if they leave. They're concerned that they're trained. And in the car business, we have people selling $50,000 items, and we're putting in $5 worth of training to them. Right. And that is the case. No one can disagree with that. We throw them into a desk. We say, "There's your desk. There's your computer. Your business cards are on the way. Go drive a car. Come back and tell me what you think." And then that's their onboarding.
And the funny part is, at Starbucks, they feel valued. That person at the window feels valued. They're getting paid, literally minimum wage. They do get health care, which in the States is a big deal. Yeah. Big deal. But they feel valued.
And that's the employment engagement of that all, and the culture. We're not building that. And the reason why we're not building it is that nasty saying, "This is the way we've always done it," keeps rearing its ugly head every single place I go. And I'm currently in Michigan, and I can't believe how backwards it is. It is just like, I go 2 steps forward, I go 5 steps backwards. And it's because they keep pushing back that this is all the way we've always done it. It's got to change. And that's why people like Brian, Larry, myself, Don, we're all employed, and Gail, and we're all employed to help dealers. But the closed-minded thinking with regards to training and coaching is the real decimation of this industry. And it keeps going back to the car lot, not the car business. And that's just my 2 cents.
And I think Brian and maybe Larry had a comment, but go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I have one. I don't know how to do the hand raise thing. And it was something, when Peter was talking about it, it helped me remember. Last week, I went online to try to check the average tenure of general managers at dealerships. And right now, they're averaging between 18 and 32 months at a store. And y'all see it all the time. One guy's the general manager at this spot for a year, 2 years. You look on LinkedIn, you see the new post, they're the general manager over here and over there. And I believe I'm setting up my marketing different because I believe these folks know that there's a time limit that they have, right? Those days of seeing the GM that's been there 10 or 15 years, y'all know that is really rare, and they're like best friends with the owners. And so knowing that it's an 18 to 32 month turnaround, the best times that I'm realizing over this last week that I've been trying this to hit them is either when they just start or after they've been there over 18 months, because you're either fresh on your way in the door and you don't want to make a mistake that your predecessor made, or you're on your way out the door and you're trying to do something to salvage your spot. But when we all tend to catch them in that in-between time, they're hitting their numbers based off whatever stats from last year, which actually means they're losing. But again, when you have a commissioned employee, and we got to remember something, most of us on this call right now are business owners. We're entrepreneurs. The way our mind thinks is different. You have to remember, just because a person's a general manager, they're just a high-level employee. That's really all of that is. So where us as business owners say, hey, there's a problem, I need to fix it so it doesn't affect my business, my company, my livelihood. It's not their company. It's not their business. They know they're not going to retire there. So what is the real incentive to view it like we view it? And so again, that's where, understanding, that's where LinkedIn is so powerful, knowing when they came in. If you catch them in that first 3 months of starting, or in that 3 months before they're about to go, and we won't know that, but they do. But if it's over 18 months, I think you'll find the hit rate is a lot stronger. But they're high-level managers. They're employees. They're not bosses. They're not entrepreneurs. They may act that way to their employees. And when a vendor comes in, might want to, but when I'm talking to them, I know I'm not talking to a fellow boss. I talk boss talk. So when I'm speaking to a GM, I realize he's an employee or she's an employee. They're an employee. So that's why my conversations had to be elevated to somebody else who speaks boss talk. Do y'all agree with that? When you really think about it, GM is just a high-level manager.
Yep. I got a question from the LinkedIn. Maybe Gail can answer it. It's from Kelly Saunders. Although it's a new platform, what's the plan for leveraging Threads to acquire more clients, customers?
Oh, that's so funny. I was going to post on my social selling forecast about that today. So,
that a basic wrestling tutorial, or?
I am curious to see how our dealers end up using it, but Threads is basically the Instagram's new Twitter. So it is Twitter, but you log in through Instagram. You can keep your username. You can keep your followers. You can post pictures. You can post videos. In regards to how our clients are going to use it for social selling, I would imagine they're going to do the same thing they do with Facebook or TikTok, right? You have your content. You have your pillars of content. You pick what you're going to post, except you're posting that same content in Threads organically. So that's how I'm kind of seeing that vision right now, but it might change depending on what some of our students do with it.
Thanks for that,
I think
Gail.
selling Threads would be great, but I think for marketing, for general managers or owners of dealerships, if we're talking about that at all, getting ourselves in the stores, at least in the poll that I sent out, this was done like 6 months ago to just 500 GMs, not even any owners, to ask them how often they're actually on Instagram. Because on Instagram, I've only got a couple thousand followers. I really don't target Instagram. And I was right. It was less than 10% that are actively on Instagram, but they were older. I think the younger GMs that are in their, mid to late 30s, going into their 40s, maybe so. And hopefully that'll change. But I know the LinkedIn platform and the YouTube platform for people that are over that 45-year-old demographic are going to those learning resources much more than they're going to those quick, constant, every 2 seconds, there's something else popping on the feed. But for selling to customers, I think Threads, I use it for my online products that I sell to end users too. As far as I'm on Threads, I'm on the gram and all that. But as far as getting to the right people to book our deals in stores, and Gail can answer that better. Are you finding that these GMs or dealer principals, at least are the ones responding to interacting with Threads or Instagram posts, or is that just for retail?
So GMs and dealer principals. So I built Retail Resilient without a website, and the only thing I had was funnels on these platforms. And our highest return was 100% Facebook. So GMs and dealer principals send us leads like constantly all day long through Facebook, more so than LinkedIn. And then the other piece of it that I found interesting is the dealers and GMs that signed up with us on LinkedIn don't engage with my content at all, but they call us.
Yeah.
I've been watching you for 5 years and I'm ready to sign up, but they will not like me. They will not share my content. They won't engage with my content, but they will watch everything.
Yeah.
And then the dealer principals on TikTok, they're really funny because when I go to a conference, they're like, oh, I watch all your TikTok videos. I love them. But again, they don't really engage with the content on TikTok, but on Facebook, they'll engage. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Brian, did you have any thoughts?
Get the GM that tells you that they use all of your videos. I mean, in all of their training sessions, they use all your videos in the sales meeting, and it's like, y'all are pimping me for free. Like, you know, I get that all the time. Just had it yesterday on a Sunday.
Brian, you have amazing videos on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
I just looked at them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But here's the question for all the trainers in the room. And Dawn, I know you put your hand up. We'll go to you right after. How often do you, Brian, do you, Larry, do you, John, do you, Gail, etc.? How often do you actually have the decision makers sitting in the room with you, or they are busy doing something really important, which nobody knows? And this instance that Ian brought up, that him and I were talking about yesterday, we made a comment, if this guy were to phone the owner about to complain in this dealership, and he's got 40 dealerships, the owner wouldn't take the call, the COO wouldn't take the call, the vice president of ops wouldn't take the call. They'd funnel it down to the GM, who did really well in the service department at the Chevy store and now is there as a GM, and they'd funnel it to them and then they'd go, gee, I'm really sorry. So nothing would happen over this. And I said to him, I said, Toyota used to be the #1 ethical brand in the world. The rules were strong, no funny stuff. So this is the thing. How often do any of you ever get decision makers sitting in on your training?
And let's start with Brian. Let's start with Brian Motes on this. He hasn't talked for a while. Go ahead, Brian. You're muted, by the way.
There's all those parties, lower left-hand corner.
There you go.
Well, I missed that. I would miss it because I was typing something. I was deep in thought about, kind of tell me what was the.
Ian noticed that. That's why he picked on you.
I figured he did. I had a thought and I was putting it in chat instead of focusing on what I was being asked.
How often do you see decision makers sitting in on training?
Rarely ever. They might introduce it and say, hey, here's who they are, and then they check the box that they got it started and they walk out of the room, and they're not a part of it as well. And that happens I probably 9.9 times out of 10. They make sure everybody's there. They check a box. They might introduce them. Hey, this is a really critical initiative for us. Have fun. I'm out.
Yeah, we love him. Let's do it. All right, rah. Gotta go golf.
I got to say, in my experience, I would say almost every class I do, at least the general manager, I can't say the owner, but at least I get a GM that sit in half a day. But again, the build up is a little bit different. I don't know how everybody builds up. Like I had one store, Gainesville Nissan, recently when they booked me, the dealer principal and the GM literally said the reason why they booked me, they watch all my stuff, but they get messages from everybody all the time. I wore them down. I mean, I have probably about 70 plus, probably think like 75 emails that is in my AWeber that when I submit a general manager's email address and names, I'll just see if they're hiring or if they post something, and I'll just put them in the funnel with it, and it wears them down. They start looking, and it's consistency. What they literally tell me, they get a call here or there from somebody once every 3 months or 4 months, but you're getting something from me every week, 2 times a week, every week for months. So wear down, and they do sit in. Like I'll say, the general manager, I get probably, like I said, probably almost every class, a GM is going to sit there for at least 2 to 3 hours, but they're interactive. They're not just sitting in there. I use them to keep them in there longer. by getting them to tell a story here or there, or I champion their rise from the sales floor to da-da-da. But when Doug puts something, and I really hope Doug says something, because Doug has been putting messages over there left and right. But when the GM sits in, I'm definitely going to be booked back. When they're not in there, it does decrease me being booked, because I like to book the next one while I'm on site, not wait until I go home and then try to do it again. The best time to book a deal is right after you book the deal. So, but I encourage, and I don't just get GMs, I encourage the whole management staff, but that's for training. On the recruiting side of it, a little bit different. I got a room full of green peas, very hard to get anybody to sit in there for those. So there's two different ones. So I'm not sure how it works for everybody else, but recruiting is one, training is the other.
100%. Does Doug want to have a thought there, or Larry? Larry hasn't said anything. I'm shocked.
That's rare. I'm surprised, man. Larry's training. He just got us on
stunned. I'm still stunned that Jeff has formally taken to calling the disclaimer about any kind of odd comment, the Larry rule. And I just heard David Goggins. I haven't heard that many F-bombs since Hunter Biden realized he lost his ticket for his computer. Okay? Here's the deal. The little film that you normally show, but you couldn't because you're in your hotel room, that guy, the white shirt, is Jack Dell. He owns the 2 dealerships that I train at. Almost everywhere I go, like Brian, I try to get the GM or somebody in. I tell them right up front, man, you're paying me. Why don't you get your butt in there and see what the hell I'm training your people on? It's the smartest thing you can do. As far as training itself, I'm going to use 2 references, since I am a musician and a ball player. I whooped somebody good this morning, Brian. You would have been proud. Okay. Vladimir Horowitz was the most decorated classical pianist of his day. He says, if I don't practice for a day, I notice. If I don't practice for 2 days, the world notices. And you can argue, as great as the NBA is, boxers, that the best athletes are Olympians. Because if it's 100th of a second difference, you go from a gold to no medal. These guys practice, and ladies practice every day for 4 years in between the Olympics. So the concept of looking at this and says, all right, great, they're trained, we don't have to call anybody for a year, is idiotic. Again, when you have a situation where by accident you point at a car and people pay $10,000 over, it leads to very, very, very sloppy, bad habits. But again, we're trainers. That's all good for us. It's great for me as a recruiter. That stuff with the general managers turning it over, Brian. Please don't talk too loud. I want to encourage that, because I charge a lot more for GMs than I do for salespeople. So all dealer principles, I speak as an ex-one. Keep up with your insanity. Myself, my wife, and my bank account all appreciate it. God bless America. Aren't you sorry you asked me to?
That's a hell of a process. I think
feel
the
like
average
singing now.
posting for a general manager is $15,000-$20,000. Is that the number now, Larry?
What's that, my buddy?
To get a general manager, is it $15,000 or $20,000 just to sign them up?
It's $15,000 or $20,000. If I don't know the guy, if it's a good friend of mine, it's $25,000. If my brother-in-law, it's $35,000. I have a sliding scale depending on how much I want to talk to you. I actually charge way less than that. It's why I'm getting 40, 50 people hired every month. But I appreciate it, Don. Don, you're looking very good, by the way, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I was going to say that when Gail and I worked at Flemington Car and Truck Country, when we hired, or we're going to hire someone to come in and do training, every general manager in the company had to show up, and the VP.
Don, let's not be ridiculous, okay? You work with Steve Califer, the late great Steve Califer.
He's the only man that would do that.
He was brilliant. For everybody that doesn't know how lucky Gail and Don were to work for this guy, there is no bigger gentleman, or was no bigger gentleman in this business. Usually they're really nice guys and bad business guys. They're great business guys and they're creeps. This guy was a gentleman supreme and a brilliant businessman. Most of these guys, Brian Maxwell hit it on the head, or Jeff hit it on the head. All right, here's your check. Let me go play golf. That's the right place to get everybody involved. I was on Fixed Stops this morning with David Long, and I'm so tired of saying, you want to cure service problems? How about some sales service meetings? where there's not hostility between the front and the back. But Don, Califer did everything right. That's why he was so successful, so respected, and so missed. I know Gail, and Gail, you barely remember this because you work with them. You're only 5 years old. I remember they wrote you up in the automotive news. Beautiful young lady.
He was the god. He was like my American father. He's the reason I'm an entrepreneur and why I have a green card and citizenship in this country.
Wait a minute. Who was your Canadian father? This could be a really good story. I haven't got that.
No, they love Gail.
This whole show is going to take one of
Gail.
now.
No, my real last name is Rubenstein, but Califer was my American godfather.
and you picked a really good one.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question, since I got all these entrepreneurs on the phone, because I'm always looking for ways to get better. What are some of the most effective methods that y'all have used that have got to the decision maker? I mean, and this is a cold person. You've never spoken to this store. I don't know what you guys use as identifiers to reach out to them.
Here it is. Brian, you don't have to go to nobody else because you're my partner, okay? Hello, this is Mr. Jackson from the IRS. To the controller.
That's a good strategy.
I'm not talking through the decision maker. I mean, through the gatekeeper. But when you get them on the line, to get set up the car, are y'all using social media? Do you just cold call everybody? Is it email? I'm just always trying
I think you have to use a process, Brian. My advice is use a little bit of everything, whatever works for you. Right. I find video works really well, especially on texting, ironically. But more importantly, add value first. So share information with that individual or group of individuals, because that's the best strategy with a large deal group, is target the whole bunch of individuals, not just one. But also, I think the takeaway from NI80A that Jeff and I had the pleasure of being at earlier this month is a lot of people selling to dealers target the franchise dealers. There's about 15,000 franchise dealers in the US. There's 120,000 independent dealers in the US, and some of them are a lot bigger than you'd realize. But more importantly, nobody talks to them. They all want to talk to the Lexus store. They want to talk to the Toyota store. They want to talk to Sonic, whatever it might be. But the independent stores, and we had the pleasure of interviewing a gentleman who is a great turnaround story. He runs 3 stores in Pittsburgh. He's a way outside the box thinker because that's why he's an independent car dealer. But more importantly, we talked to a marketing director at the show. They have 80 independent stores. So don't confuse that the franchise dealers are your only prospect.
Are these like JD Byrider stores? What kind of franchise?
I have the information. I mean, reach out to me if you're curious. But I believe Doug had a comment. He had his traditional hand up, so I wanted to go through that.
Yeah. So getting back to this whole training thing, I think it all starts with the store culture, and I'm sure you guys that train know this. Generally, what we find when we come into stores is there's no culture to training. There's no culture to development. It doesn't exist from the top on down. And that's why we usually have to start with leadership training and teach the managers how to be leaders. And then once you've implanted the training, then the important thing is to focus on the leading behaviors, not the lagging metrics. All too often times,
right, you're absolutely right.
And you need to focus on the leading behaviors and then coach. And Peter put it in the comments. Individualized coaching is how you make the training highly effective, but without the data to do that, dealers view it as I'm just blowing money on training. I'd love to get your guys' opinion on all that.
So you mean just because they're a great salesman doesn't mean they're a great manager?
Shockingly, no. The reason we have a country is George Washington led from the front, not the back. The reason we had a successful civil rights movement was Martin Luther King never said there's a lot of racists in Alabama, be careful. He led the front every march. When you can say to people, let's do it, let me show you, I got your back, it's a lot different. That's why there's so much dysfunction at dealerships, because the owner thinks one thing's going on, the GM thinks something else is going on, and everybody else has their own agenda. You're 100% right. Hey, Brian, it's happened to you, it's happened to me. You train like a maniac. You get them to a fever pitch, and they call you and say, I don't get it. Mr. Feldman, I went back to the dealership, and they said, we're not doing that, bull. We're doing like we always do.
Yep, that's
100% right, though.
And then they changed the GM 18 months later.
Oh,
yep. And then you got to resell him. You got to resell him or her again. And it's like, Is
So
any
Larry,
of the
about
carpets
10 years ago, I was working with the dealer group and they're using the Cardone system. And then we get into the dealership and they're not using Cardone day to day. No, that's what they're teaching at the corporate level. We don't use that day to day. We use this. And
Which
you know
is
what they
crazy.
have?
It's not
Foursquare.
connecting the
They're
dots, Don.
using Foursquare from 25 years ago.
It's not connecting the dots. And by the way, Brian, I answered earlier with a joke. You know the best way to get to anybody? It's through somebody else. You can be handsome, funny, smart. You can have videos directed by Gail, and she's the master. But they're not interested. But if they're a guy named John Kelly told me 20 years ago, he says, Larry, if you tell me you're handsome, don't mean a damn thing. But if my wife or girlfriend says you're handsome, now you're handsome. When another dealer reaches out, or you say, reach out to so-and-so, it changes the whole ball game. All of a sudden, they're receptive.
Big time. You're right about that. But Don said something. He said something too. Whenever I hear a store even bring up Grant Cardone's name to me, I immediately know I am in for a problem. Because the fact that you have people that are still using, this man ain't been around the automotive industry and I don't know how long.
82.
His stuff is so outdated. And do you know how much they charge these dealers for that? For the access to that? It's crazy.
This is $20,000 program.
But not only that, it's not even
like one of his team will call in on Zoom for 30 minutes with these. So it's not even Grant.
Well, but it's Stuker. It's Tom Stuker with a different rapper. That's all it is. It's Tom Stuker training.
So just one thing there. There's a very successful TV show called Bar Rescue.
Yeah.
And John Taffer goes into bars and restaurants and tries to rescue them from implosion. The amount of bars that go back to the old system when he leaves and fail after he brings a success method to them is monumental, and it is exactly the same in our business. As soon as we walk out of the door, it's like, oh my God, we got to go back and do this system. No, you don't. And they implode all the time.
Yeah,
so,
you know. And
the bottom line is this, is when business comes to you, you're the best.
Yeah.
When you got to create your own business, all of a sudden you panic. And for these places, these bars, these dealerships, whatever it is, and especially now, I mean, you know, I'm noticing the world's getting busier. I'm noticing places, bars and restaurants are fuller than they have been in 3 years, 4 years. And they're doing everything right, but they suck. We went to one yesterday for lunch. And the hostess is sitting there. I walk in, say, hey, I have a reservation. She goes, yeah, but your friends are sitting there. I said, we didn't want to go sit outside. And they said, well, we wouldn't give them a table on the outside till you got here. And there's 10 tables outside. So I had to argue with her. And finally she goes out and says, well, but that table's dirty. I said, I'll sit here until we clean it. She comes over, wipes it, throws the menus down and walks away. So
hey, Jeff, excuse me. You just remade Doug Reeves' point. That's not them, that's the manager. Okay. If the manager's attitude is, oh, we can't go till we seat everybody. Are you out of your freaking mind? So it's a party of 5 and there's 3 there. And listen, it's really simple. I'm not kidding. We've become less civil as a society. There is no conscious thought attached. I mean, Gail puts unbelievable thought into her stuff. She's Machiavelli. She plans it out. But most of these TikTok videos drive people my age crazy because they're so mindless. Yeah, let's jumping off the building without a parachute. Let's see if I bounce. You know, we don't think about what we're doing. The customer is paying you. I say it all the time. We kiss their own butts. It ain't the owner that's paying you, the GM, it's your customer. They're the middle guys handling the money. And let's face it, once they seat you, somebody's going to be asking for a tip. So if you don't kiss their butt a little bit, if you don't make them feel comfortable about what you're doing or how you're doing it, you're never going to get anywhere. It's all back to the same thing. You get up in the morning and say, I'm going to be miserable, I'm going to be happy.
They put in from the top.
Yep. Jeff, we got 5 minutes left. We didn't get through many questions, but maybe there's some comments. Brian has one.
Brian's got his hand up, his literal hand up.
Brian.
Yeah, I was gonna add. So one of the things, it's kind of a Bible to the industry that I had to read and use when I got involved in training and development. Like I said, for Miami and Denny's and all that. No, it's called telling ain't training, and we're all guilty of that. We stand at the front of the room and we hype and we tell and we do this and all that, but there's an entire industry to this, an entire discipline around IO psychology and adult development, adult learning, and all of that. And telling, like I said, telling ain't training is a great Bible. It'd be a great read for anybody that's in this call. It'll help you kind of sharpen in on how you're doing and how we're all doing and how to continue to advocate for a learning culture. Doug talked about that, about how you build a learning culture and a development culture. I would definitely advocate for anybody in this room to read that book. It's a great read. And I guarantee you'll look at things a little bit differently when you do.
Is there a child? Is there an addition for younger learners? Because my wife insists I'm not an adult. I'm not sure I would qualify to read that specific manual.
Okay, Larry, I'm sorry, I got you beat there. I am woke. I officially identify as a 12-year-old.
Oh my God. You guys are
you're gonna have two bald Canadian guys dancing on TikTok soon. God bless America.
Hey, I'm not bald.
Already had problems.
What's the name of the book, Brian? Again, what's the name of the book?
Telling ain't training.
Yeah, telling ain't training.
Because I agree with what he said, but again, it's like to help change a culture in a store or a group of stores, you got to be booked long enough to do it. And you know, you guys may have, but when you're talking to somebody about booking a training, if you bring up one other topic in the middle of that, it could derail. It's kind of like trying to help a customer buy more than one vehicle at the same time. You know what I mean? Too much information, too many options, information overload. Because I agree with you. Once I'm in there, man, I want to change it, but it's like, how do I get the commitment? Because I'm not going to do it for free. How do I get the financial commitment to where when I get done, that we can work on the culture of the store, you know what I'm saying, it is beneficial for us both. How have you been able to do that?
Well, you know, Brian, I have to tell you something, and then we got to go to close the show.
Okay.
I don't think it's a financial issue, in my humble opinion.
No, it's not.
Just based on the bar rescue comment. A guy comes in and gives them $2 million worth of a redo. A highly successful person that's probably getting paid $10 million to do a TV show, as well as his own business, comes in proven stuff that has worked hundreds of times, and they don't follow it because they go back to the old way. You go in, Larry goes in, John Latka goes in, Gail goes in, Brian goes in, Doug Reeves and their team goes in. And they go back 3 months later and they discover that, oh yeah, well, we couldn't do it because we had a busy day. We got it a private sale. We got this, and this. So the bottom line is, and again, I'm going back to my rhetoric. Right now, they're heroes by hiding in the back room. Yeah. Making lots and lots of money. And that's the test is the really true ones are the ones that go out there and actually do it even when they're busy. And we are out of time. Thank you, everybody. What a great, I got to tell you something. This show was so great because we got to ask one question. And you guys, y'all, Brian, you guys took it and you ran with it. You made great points. I firmly believe, Ian, you got to agree with me that our audience is just going to eat this up terribly. We will have a few people with a bunch of letters behind their name doing these go, oh, I don't think so, because, I da-da-da-da-da-da. So, of course.
And we didn't have any comments from Mr. Latka. I was a little shocked. Latka didn't even say anything. I was like,
right, I was waiting on John.
Yeah, John, don't you have a comment? You're muted.
Here he comes.
Okay, now I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Listen, I was just, thrilled to listen to all the comments. Let me share what I do or what I've done in the past with dealers. I have what's called a performance management partnership program. It's not where we go in and we do training for a day or two or a week. This is ongoing. I asked for a minimum commitment of 1 year. So we go in, we set up the program, including our proprietary software, so that we can track performance. And then what we do is we do the initial training, And then on a weekly basis, I have a call with a designated manager to review what's going on by salesperson, because we look at the key performance indicators that we measure that lead to higher volumes and higher closing ratios. Then once a month, I'm either physically at the dealership or we do Zoom calls, and we basically take the information that we have from the software that identifies the improvement opportunities for each individual person. And this includes management. So rather than going in and doing one type of training for everybody, we take a look at where someone may be struggling, and it could be on demo drives, it could be how they present a proposal, it might be that they're not doing enough appraisals, and we focus on those areas and then train, coach specifically to help that person improve. Result can be very dramatic. To give you an example, a dealer we started working with last August, and so the end of June was 10 months that we've been working with this dealership. We looked at the stats from the first 5 months versus the last 5 months, and they had an increase of 60.1% in sales volume.
Quantified.
Wow.
Other dealers that we've worked with prior to pre-COVID saw dramatic results. My only problem was that the results were so dramatic, these dealers ended up selling out to bigger dealer groups. Now I have to replace them with dealers that want to dramatically increase so that they too can sell out if that's what they want to do, or continue working with me and see more dramatic results.
Well, you're missing out on the you can help them sell their dealership angle. Anyway, thanks very much, John. Thanks very much, everybody. And have yourself a great week. And it's been a pleasure. Here we go.
Oh la la. What?
Thanks for joining us. It was a great show, and follow us anywhere you would like on your favorite podcast, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course on our YouTube, or subscribe to our own channel.